I never thought I'd be the guy questioning his wife's loyalty. Mercy and I had been married for 6 years, and despite the usual ups and downs, I always believed we had something real. But lately, something fell off. It started subtly, her being a little too preoccupied with her phone, laughing at messages she wouldn't let me see, dressing up more than usual for so-called girls' nights. At first, I chalked it up to overthinking. I had never been the jealous type, and I certainly didn't want to become one now. Then came the nights out. They became more frequent, always the same excuse, just a little gathering with the girls. It wasn't just the frequency that bothered me, it was the way she acted when she got home. Some nights, she'd come back buzzing with energy, almost giddy. Other nights, she seemed distant, as if she were somewhere else entirely. One evening, as she was getting ready, I casually asked, "So, who's all going tonight?" She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, before rattling off names. I knew some of them, good women, married, responsible. But there were others I had never heard of, names that never came up before. I let it slide, but my gut told me something wasn't right. Then came the slip-up. Mercy was in the shower, and her phone, which she never let out of her sight, buzzed on the nightstand. I shouldn't have looked, but something in me just needed to know. The message was from Nick, a friend of hers. It read, "You sure Kyle still buys this?" I put the phone down before I could see her response. My heart pounded. It could have meant anything, but I knew deep down what it meant. I wasn't imagining things. Something was going on, and it wasn't good. I decided not to jump to conclusions. If there was anything I had learned in life, it was that accusations without proof could ruin things just as much as betrayal itself. I needed to be sure. That's when I reached out to Nick. Now, Nick wasn't exactly Mercy's closest friend, more like an acquaintance from our social circles. I had no idea why he sent that message, but I was about to find out. "Nick, we need to talk," I texted him. He responded almost immediately, agreeing to meet the next day. We met at a small cafe downtown, a neutral place where no one would recognize us. I didn't beat around the bush. "Why'd you text Mercy asking if I still believed her stories?" Nick looked uncomfortable. He ran a hand through his hair, glancing around before leaning in. "Look, man. I didn't know if I should tell you this, but I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. Mercy hasn't been going where she says she is." I felt my stomach drop, but I kept my expression neutral. "Then where's she going?" Nick sighed. "Clubs. Not just any clubs, places where people go to meet others. And she's not just going once in a while. She's a regular." I clenched my jaw. "You're sure?" "I've seen her, Kyle. Multiple times. And she's not just there for a drink. She meets new guys every time." It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was mistaken, but I couldn't. The signs had been there, and now I had confirmation. Nick hesitated before adding, "I even tracked her once. Not proud of it, but I had to be sure. She went straight from your house to one of those places." I nodded, trying to process it all. "I need proof." Nick pulled out his phone and scrolled through his photos before sliding it across the table. The pictures were clear as day. Mercy, laughing, leaning in close to different men, her wedding ring noticeably absent. I swallowed the lump in my throat. There was no mistaking what I was seeing. I had been played. I exhaled sharply and looked at Nick. "I need to handle this right. I can't just confront her without a plan." Nick nodded. "I'll help however I can." And with that, the real work began. This wasn't just about catching Mercy, it was about making sure she could never manipulate me again. After my meeting with Nick, I drove home in silence, my thoughts racing. I had the proof, but now I needed a plan. Mercy was smart. She had managed to keep this up for months without raising real suspicion. If I confronted her outright, she'd deny everything, twist the narrative, maybe even make me feel like I was the bad guy. No, I needed something solid, something she couldn't worm her way out of. I spent the next few days gathering more information. Nick introduced me to a few of the guys Mercy had met at those clubs. Most of them had no idea she was married. One of them, a guy named Jordan, looked genuinely shaken when I showed him a picture of us on our anniversary. Man, she told me she was single. Said she had just gotten out of a long relationship. I kept my composure. You're not the first one to say that. Another guy, Devin, had met her just 2 weeks ago. She seemed fun, carefree. But now? I feel like an idiot. It was clear Mercy had perfected her act. She wasn't just sneaking around. She was living a double life. The pieces were all coming together, and as painful as it was to see the full picture, I knew I had to keep going. I took things a step further. With Nick's help, I installed a small GPS tracker in Mercy's car. I knew she had another girls' night coming up, and I wanted to see exactly where she was going. Sure enough, the moment she left the house, I watched the tracker show her heading straight to one of the clubs. She stayed for hours. Around midnight, I saw the start moving again, but instead of heading home, she went to an apartment complex across town. I clenched my fists. That was all I needed. I sat down with Nick, and together, we crafted a plan. It wasn't just about catching Mercy in the act. I wanted her to see, in real time, how badly she had underestimated me. First, I reached out to the guys she had been seeing. Most of them wanted nothing to do with her anymore, but a few agreed to help expose the truth. The idea was simple. We'd all be at the same club the next time she went, and at the right moment, she'd see every lie she had told come crashing down on her. Next, I made sure to invite some of Mercy's closest friends, ones who thought she was the devoted wife. They needed to see this for themselves. If Mercy had been lying to me, chances were she had been lying to them too. The final piece? I needed to make sure Mercy never saw it coming. That meant keeping things normal at home, acting like the clueless husband she thought I was. It wasn't easy. Every time she smiled at me, every time she kissed me goodbye, I had to fight the urge to call her out. But I played my role well. She had no idea the walls were closing in. Nick and I scouted the club in advance, making sure we had the right setup. The goal wasn't to cause a scene, just enough of one that Mercy couldn't talk her way out of it. We planned everything down to the minute, ensuring that by the time she realized what was happening, it would be too late to escape. And so we waited. The stage was set. The night had finally arrived. Everything was in place. Mercy left the house around 9 p.m., dressed in the kind of outfit she never wore around me, something meant to impress, to attract. I acted like I wasn't paying attention, but inside, my stomach twisted with the weight of what I knew was about to happen. Nick and I had already positioned ourselves at the club well in advance. The guys she had been seeing were there too, scattered throughout, waiting for the moment. Mercy had no idea that she was walking straight into her own downfall. I watched as she arrived, her posture confident, her face lit up with excitement. She scanned the room, searching for her next thrill, completely oblivious to the fact that the people surrounding her were part of something much bigger than just another night out. It wasn't long before she found someone, a man sitting at the bar alone. She approached him the same way I had seen in the pictures Nick had collected, that same effortless charm, the same playful touch on the arm. Then, right on cue, Jordan, the first guy we had spoken to, stepped into view. Nick gave him a subtle nod from across the room, the agreed-upon signal. Jordan adjusted his jacket, took a slow sip of his drink, and then walked up to them, his expression casual, but his words deliberate. He walked up to them, his expression casual, but his words deliberate. "Hey, Mercy. Funny seeing you here again." Her entire body stiffened. I saw it immediately, the way her fingers twitched against the rim of her glass. She forced a smile, trying to play it cool. "Oh, hey, Jordan. Hi, what are you doing here?" Jordan didn't answer. Instead, Devin walked up next. Then another. One by one, they surrounded her, each of them wearing the same look of realization, of betrayal. "Mercy, who's this guy?" Devin asked, nodding toward the man at the bar. "Wait," the man said, now looking at her suspiciously. "You know all these guys?" Mercy stammered, her carefully crafted facade cracking right in front of everyone. She turned, probably looking for an exit, but then she saw me. Standing at the edge of the group, arms crossed, just watching. Her face paled. "Kyle, I took a slow step forward. Go ahead, Mercy. Keep going. I want to hear how you talk your way out of this one. The music continued in the background, but in our little corner of the club, it might as well have been silent. Eyes turned toward us. The strangers in the room, the people who had no idea who we were, they could tell something big was happening. And Mercy? She was trapped. Her friends were there too, the ones she had told she was happily married, the ones she had lied to just as much as she had lied to me. I watched their faces shift from confusion to realization to disgust. This isn't what it looks like, she tried, her voice uneven. Really? I asked. Because it looks exactly like what it is. You've been lying, Mercy. Not just to me. To everyone. And now, the truth is right here in front of you. The weight of the moment settled in. Mercy stood there, frozen, her mind likely racing for an escape that didn't exist. I let the silence stretch, let her feel the crushing reality of what she had done. Then, the whispers started. The clubgoers who had been watching from a distance were now murmuring, their gazes locking onto Mercy as realization spread among them. Some shook their heads, others exchanged knowing glances, while a few whispered behind their hands. Mercy's eyes darted around the room, her breathing uneven. She seemed to shrink under the weight of their stares, her fingers clutching at the fabric of her dress as if it could somehow shield her from the judgment pressing in on all sides. Exchanging looks. The men she had deceived, the ones who had unknowingly been part of her double life, shook their heads and walked away, leaving her standing there, exposed and alone. Her friends didn't move to defend her. In fact, one of them, Lauren, I think, muttered, "I can't believe you," before turning her back and walking out. I should have felt satisfaction. Maybe even triumph. But all I felt was emptiness. Because no matter how well I had planned this, no matter how much she deserved it, the truth was that I had lost something too. The person I thought I had married, the life I thought we had built, it was gone. Mercy's lips parted like she wanted to say something, but I had nothing left to hear. I turned to Nick, gave him a nod, and together, we walked out of the club, leaving her standing there in the wreckage of her own choices. I didn't look back as I walked out of the club. Nick was beside me, silent, but I could feel his approval. The cool night air hit me like a wake-up call, but the numbness inside me didn't fade. I had exposed Mercy, laid bare the truth she had so carefully hidden, but it didn't feel like victory. It just felt over. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel instead. I needed space, a moment to breathe without the weight of everything pressing down on me. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls from Mercy, messages that ranged from desperate apologies to outright denials. I ignored them all. Let her sit in the mess she made. By morning, the fallout had spread. Word traveled fast, and Mercy's double life was no longer a secret. She tried to spin the story, telling anyone who would listen that it was a misunderstanding, that I had overreacted. But the truth was undeniable. The pictures, the witnesses, the sheer number of people she had deceived, it was all too much to dismiss. Her friends, the ones who had believed her lies, began to distance themselves, some out of disappointment, others out of sheer embarrassment for ever trusting her. A few reached out to me, apologizing for not seeing it sooner. I didn't care. Their regret didn't change anything. Word traveled fast, and Mercy's double life was no longer a secret. Her friends, the ones who had believed her lies, were turning away from her. Some of them reached out to me, apologizing for not seeing it sooner. I didn't care. Their regret didn't change anything. Then came the knock on my hotel door. I opened it to find Mercy standing there, eyes red, shoulders slumped. "Kyle, please, just talk to me." I stepped aside, letting her in, but I didn't speak. She fidgeted, wringing her hands. "I messed up. I know that. But it didn't mean anything, I swear. It was just... I don't know. I got caught up in it." I stared at her. It didn't mean anything? Mercy, it meant everything. Every time you left, every time you lied, it meant something. And now, there's nothing left. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. "I can change, Kyle. We can fix this." I shook my head. No, we can't. Act 8. Moving on. The divorce papers were filed within the week. Mercy didn't fight it. What could she say? The truth was undeniable, and she knew it. Moving out of our house felt surreal. As I packed, I found an old photo album tucked away in the back of a drawer, our honeymoon pictures, smiles frozen in time before everything unraveled. I ran my fingers over the cover, hesitating for just a moment before placing it in a box. Some memories weren't meant to be carried forward, but letting them go completely felt impossible. Packing up my life, separating what was mine from what was hers, it was like erasing years of history. But I needed the clean break. I needed to start over. Nick was there to help. You doing okay? I exhaled. I don't know, but I will be. And I meant it. The pain was still there, but so was the relief. No more lies. No more wondering what she was doing, who she was with. That chapter was closed. In the weeks that followed, I focused on myself. I picked up running again, something I hadn't done since college, feeling the tension ease with every mile. I dusted off my old guitar, playing songs I had nearly forgotten. More than anything, I reconnected with friends I had drifted away from, spending weekends fishing with Nick or grabbing coffee with coworkers I had always been too busy for. Slowly, the weight on my chest lifted. I wasn't just surviving, I was living again. I reconnected with old friends, spent time on hobbies I had neglected. Slowly, the weight on my chest lifted. I wasn't just surviving, I was living again. One afternoon, I got a message from an unknown number. I heard about everything. If you ever want to grab a coffee, just as friends, let me know. Lauren. I stared at it for a while before replying. Maybe someday. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't rushing. I wasn't chasing closure or revenge. I was just moving forward, one step at a time. And that was enough.